moving around in trade today. But let's talk about the big story that we are tracking. Government has cut effective royalty rates on oil and gas production to boost India's upstream sector. The rates will come up here on the screen in way they have cut it across segments and for oil and gas differently. We are now joined by Prashant Vasisht. He is the Senior Vice President and Co-Group Head, ICRA, to discuss more on what it would mean for the sector overall and if it is really the next trigger for investments to come by in oil and gas production and the upstream space. So Prashant, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining in. First, what do you make of these royalty rate cuts that have come by? Are they enough to spur more investment considering the production fall that we've been seeing in last couple of years?
Yeah, actually I think so, because see, this was a long-standing demand of the industry that these rates be reduced, which would enable higher payout for the entity that is going to be undertaking the high-risk exploration and production projects in offshore especially. So these rates would certainly improve the IRRs or the payback periods for the upstream entities, which would enable better monetization and probably incentivize investment in this sector.
Prashant, just for the benefit of our viewers, there's always been this GST rate confusion around royalty, right? Can you clarify that for us? What's the rate currently and what is the royalty amount paid on by these companies?
So the royalty is paid on the wellhead price of crude oil or gas, and here the rates have been cut from 16, as you're mentioning, from 16 to about 10% for onshore and so on. The GST is also further applicable on this royalty, which again is the demand of the industry that this should not be subject to further GST. There should not be any royalty on GST also.
Okay.
Royalty on GST on royalty.
Understood that. Prashant, when we're talking about the space itself, we're talking mainly about three companies, right? ONGC Oil India from the PSA space, Vedanta Health and Oil and Gas Unit. Does this move incentivize FI investments? Does this move incentivize more companies? And how much time before we can actually see some oil being drilled out by some of these fresh investments?
So see, these are the larger producers that you're talking about, but there are a host of others as well, smaller entities. Also, we've not been able to attract the global big oil companies. So, and to say what would be the timeline, see, that is always difficult to say. This is a multi-year projects, especially in the offshore sector, which would require exhaustive exploration effort and then development drilling, exploration drilling and development drilling. So it's it usually takes about 4 to 5 years for some of these projects to actually start producing the first molecule of hydrocarbon.
A falling production has been one of the things, Prashant, in the country. We have seen a 22% fall in crude oil production in last 10, 12 years, and gas production is also not increasing. Are there any other incentives needed? Because production really cannot be handled on an immediate basis, right? This will, as you said, these are long gestation projects. So what can be done in the immediate future, considering that we are facing an energy shock and largely dependent on imports for crude and gas?
Yeah, so see, the reason why you have not attracted a lot of investment in this sector from the big oil companies that I was mentioning about earlier is, the onerous process of, the management committee approvals, etc. And those have been addressed by moving from to HELP, which is the hydrocarbon exploration licensing policy. Additionally, some of these tax rates, etc., royalty and cess have also been the demands of the industry that these be reduced. Another point is, the minimum of programs, these tend to be a little onerous at times in case, the prospectivity is not there. Still the minimum of programs have to be met. Probably some of these are other areas which, the government can look at closely for incentivizing the sector for further more investments.
Okay. Prashant, just going across to the OMC space or the downstream, when you're looking at these companies, currently they are in the midst of a crisis. They've not been able to raise, the fuel prices at the pump. How much longer can this continue? What are the kind of timelines you think by which they will be forced to raise prices, and what is the likely quantum of the price hikes they would require to take?
See, that's a very interesting question. It would be difficult for me to predict any timelines. However, the OMCs, as per our calculations, are losing about 1,000 crores every day. That is on the LPG, domestic LPG and diesel and petrol sales. Considering about $120 to $125 per barrel of the crude prices and the long-term averages for the crack spreads. Now, so this kind of loss is unsustainable clearly, and this will have the government and OMCs will have to sort of take that plunge so as to speak, of increasing prices at some point in time because the losses are just too high.
That's the word that we got from the oil minister as well, that he said, I'm not ruling out any price hikes, but there's no correlation between elections and price hikes. So in that context, he said that price hike is not really ruled out. Prashant, last question before we let you go. This royalty cut, do you think this is a near-term benefit, or investors will have to wait for a longer term? Because all these upstream stocks, they're trading at a discount to global upstream stocks, be it the likes of Shell, be it the likes of ExxonMobil. ONGC Oil India are trading at 8 to 9 times, the others are trading at 15 to 16 times. So that valuation gap, I know you cannot talk stock specific, but the valuation gap would take some time to converge, right? Because it's a long period returns that we would see here.
Yeah, certainly. See, ultimately these stocks are also driven by, the new finds, the aggression with which, they bring more increased revenues, increased production. And India has not had that much prospectivity in terms as compared to some of the other global hotspots, say like Guyana, etc. And more and more of our finds are now in deep water. Case in point is the Andaman find. So possibly the valuation doesn't reflect the growth potential. But some of these, the royalty cuts for one could, incentivize investment in more difficult areas, which could lead to higher growth.
Well, thank you so much, Prashant, for joining us, giving us a sense of the big move that the oil and gas ministry has taken with regard to exploration in India. But moving on.